Eswar, we left off talking about China and this whole idea of them rebalancing the development model less away from being so export dependent and investment dependent and more towards being consumption dependent, right? This is part of dual circulation. This is something that they started talking about all the way back in 2018 when they came out explicitly to say, look, the old model, that doesn't work anymore. Let's change. How successful have they been, though, changing?
Initially, they were somewhat successful, Martin, because in fact, by the end of 2019, we had a situation where consumption accounted for a greater fraction of GDP than investment. Consumption was contributing more to GDP growth. There was a shift away from the manufacturing sector to service sector, which by that point accounted for a little over 50% of GDP. So things were going in the right direction until COVID hit. In the recovery from the COVID pandemic, China got back to its old playbook, which it has been using for the last couple of years. And there has largely been money from state-owned banks going to state-owned enterprises to boost growth through investment. So in the last 2 or 3 years, unfortunately, we have seen the gap between the production side of the economy and the consumption side of the economy widening, which is why when some parts of the world, including the US, are now facing inflationary pressures, China has in fact been facing deflationary pressures and has become even more dependent on exports than it was before 2020. So unfortunately, all of that progress not all of that progress, but some of that progress has been reversed and things haven't been going in the right direction in the post-COVID period.
Yeah, I think last I checked in terms of numbers, consumption as a share of GDP is actually below 40%, about 38, 39, when a lot of economists think that, look, you need to get that number at least 50, if not higher. But, you know, one thing that seems to be positive that's happened in China, and this was several months ago, Xi Jinping embracing Jack Ma. He's back from Siberia, or rather back from Tokyo, from Japan. And it all seemed pretty good, right? It seemed like a symbolic way of signaling that, look, private sector, it's okay to come out. It's safe, and we need you now. Is that really true? Because the one thing I noticed is shortly after that meeting and that big photo op where Xi Jinping shakes hands with Jack Ma, about a week later, right, there was a Politburo meeting, and the outcome of that was a decision to stress the importance of party security. So it kind of sounds like, you know, they're talking out of both sides of their mouth. I mean, can both be true at the same time?
So in 2021 and 2022, there was a significant crackdown on parts of the private sector, especially the tech sector, private enterprises providing healthcare, and also the education sector. And since then, since early 2023, the government has been trying to walk that back, but private enterprises don't quite seem to be buying it. Both household and private business confidence have been quite weak in the last couple of years. Private sector investment has not grown very much. Most of the growth in investment has come from the public sector. But this recent photo op seems to have symbolically and substantively been important because, as you said, it is Jack Ma being brought in from the cold, and he's a very important element of what the private sector stands for. And right now, with the rest of the world seemingly turning its back against China, I think there is a sense that national pride calls for the private sector and the state sector to work together. And at least from some of my contacts in Beijing, I get the sense that there is a subtle change in the wind blowing in Beijing, that certainly they're not fully open to the private sector yet, but they recognize that if China is going to make it through this very difficult period, especially in its relationship with the US, it needs the private sector, and they need the private sector and the state sector to work together. Whether the private sector is going to buy it remains to be seen.
I guess it's really the embrace of the private sector, the China way, I would say.